Take it easy.
Hey, what's going on, Drip fam? It's Phil here back with another video, and in today's video we're talking about my wealth map and journey to 8 figures. So as you can see below, I've drawn out 3 different diagrams. Each of them are weighted differently as far as where I plan on investing or putting my money in order to reach the goal of a $10 million plus net worth. So before I start this video, I do want to give a general disclaimer that I am not a licensed financial advisor or legal advisor. Please do not take any of the content in this video as legal and or financial advice. I am not licensed to give out that type of information. I just have to say that to protect myself. So in the leftmost diagram, you can see a $sign, and the $sign stands for liquid cash. I plan on keeping 20% of my net worth in liquid cash at any given time. The reason for this starts with the very first item on the left-hand side, which are the multiple $signs. This symbol stands for having micro businesses. So, as some of you know, obviously if you subscribe to the channel, I have multiple successful online businesses that I own and operate in the advertising marketing space, as well as in the service based business space and in the e-commerce and retail space. So that being said, I'm a big fan of micro businesses because they're a lean model that are proven to work and can be easily scaled with minimal risk. So I started my first micro business, quote unquote, in 2013, and I started it on a less than $100 budget. I ended up making about $1,000 to $2,000 off of that. I used that money to help kind of fund my online journey to get me into 2014, where I started another micro business that ended up making several $100,000, and I did that all with $100 left of that original $2,000. So that being said, I'm a huge fan of micro businesses because I've grown one of my current businesses up to a 7-figure level, and it just keeps on going and going with minimal investment and risk. The second point that I have in the same diagram, which you can see in the center, is the no debt symbol. I am not a fan of debt. I've taken this kind of from the Dave Ramsey perspective. I'm a huge fan of Dave Ramsey and his wealth building philosophy. If you guys don't know who Dave Ramsey is, be sure to go check out the Dave Ramsey Show. I think he's probably one of the most honest and straightforward wealth building talk show hosts out there, if not the most. He's a great person to follow if you're somebody who is either in debt or you're looking to build yourself up to being a millionaire or a multimillionaire. And this kind of fuels the micro businesses, is not being in debt. If I own my own home, if I own my own vehicles, if I don't go out and spend stupid amounts of money on credit cards or things I can't afford, if I basically don't have the cash for it in my pocket or in my bank account, I look at it as I cannot afford it. And that is one thing that has always kind of saved me and protected me while other online entrepreneurs have struggled. A lot of guys and girls go out and they will have really opulent high-end lifestyles. I'm not that type of person outside of my cars, but my cars are used specifically for this YouTube channel and the promotion of Drip Revenue. So that's the only justification that I have of those two vehicles. My other vehicle is like a 2009 Ford Escape that costs $7,000. It's probably worth maybe $4,000 at this point. So it's a complete beater, and that's my daily driver. The point is that I'm not a big fan of debt because the more that I have left over at the end of the day to throw back into micro businesses, the more money that I can create out of thin air. The third point that you can see on the right is the kind of emergency/caution sign. And what that stands for is I plan on keeping a very bare minimum of $100,000 to $200,000 as just an emergency fund. And this is completely set aside outside of my businesses. So if there's an emergency situation, a major health or life crisis comes up for me or my family, I have the $100,000 to $200,000 there just kind of as an emergency backup fund that can be used at any given time. This is something that I feel is super, super important because my philosophy has always been that the only thing that's guaranteed other than death and taxes is change. And You're going to have so many different curveballs in your life and in your journey to wealth building that you never know. And I think that an emergency fund is just it's just a necessity for everybody. So on to the next diagram in the center, which is represented by the house, and that is 30% of my net worth in real estate. A lot of you are going to kind of be skeptical about this and why I chose to put a third or just under a third of my net worth in real estate. And that's simply because real estate is something that is fairly stable and can provide pretty conservative and consistent returns when it's done correctly. And this is obviously something that is not, there's a lot of complexities to it. I'm not a professional real estate person. I have a very, very basic philosophy when it comes to investing in real estate. My mentor, who taught me real estate, kind of encouraged me to keep it simple and find, like a mixture that was right for me. My real estate investing strategy is the first point: buying a foreclosed home. And a lot of you are wondering why the heck I would ever do that if I'm making as much money as I say I am. That goes right back to the living below your means, no debt lifestyle. I do not plan on taking a mortgage out to buy a house. That is ridiculously stupid in my opinion. If you have the cash to do it, in my opinion, buy a house outright. Pay cash for the house. So with 90% of people, the mortgage is pretty much the highest expense. It's something that people constantly have to stress over whether they can pay their mortgage or pay their rent or whatever it may be. I feel that by buying a house, it allows me to take that monthly payment that I may be putting into a home and just put it back into my businesses without having to worry about debt or put strain on the business. Building up a nest egg enough to be able to buy a house outright and a foreclosed one to add to that is something that I feel is the smartest move for me, at least starting out. And the reason why I say a foreclosed home is in the current state of the market with housing, we're kind of on the higher end of the spectrum right now of prices of homes. So it's not really wise for me to go out and put, let's say, $250,000 on a house when I could wait for the market to go back down, which is probably, in my opinion, going to happen in the next few years. We're going to have some type of correction, and then buy a foreclosed home and really save a lot of money. Plus, the house will appreciate not only naturally, but it's going to appreciate once the market goes up as well. So I can have maybe 10, 20 plus percent gains just by buying a house. So that's the first part of my strategy with real estate. The second part is kind of a buy and hold strategy with rentals. I've always liked the idea of rentals, once again, paying cash for them and not using a mortgage leveraging model. I feel that mortgage leveraging is a really dangerous thing. If you don't know what you're doing, you don't have enough backup cash to cover it. Simply because, once again, go back and listen to like Dave Ramsey and his story. Dave talks about his, he started out at 27 years old. He owned $4 million worth of real estate and he had $3 million in debt. So he was a millionaire technically, but he still had the $3 million in debt. And as soon as the banks came back and they sold the notes or the loans, they gave him 90 days to pay off $3 million. Obviously didn't have it. He had to file for bankruptcy. And that's kind of the situation that I want to use as a example of how not to do real estate investing when it comes to buying properties. So when it comes to buying properties, I'm paying cash for them. They don't have to be $400,000 homes. You can build, if you already have the land, you can build duplexes for a lot less money than most people think, and rent them out and do kind of multifamily housing. So that's another important part of my real estate investing plan is going to be buy and hold and rentals. The third and final part on the right, which you can see, is a terrible, terrible drawing of what's supposed to be land, and that is my third part of my real estate investing strategy. Land is something that I feel is always going to hold its value. I mean, regardless of where it is, obviously with real estate, location is monstrously important. But regardless of where it is, land tends to be pretty steady. This could be either for the mineral rights aspect of it, it could be the location aspect of it, and it could most simply be the aspect that you can't really create more land. It's just kind of a limited supply. So, the third part of my real estate investing strategy is to have some portfolio of the real estate element be land. So this leaves us with the third and final diagram on the right, which I have allocated 50% of my entire net worth to this category. And this is simply going to be general investments. So the first part of this strategy for me is to put a good amount of my money into multiple solid either mutual funds or index funds or ETFs. And my strategy for this is to not pursue overly aggressive or high risk funds, but rather to stick with more moderate and or conservative funds that are still going to provide consistent gains in, let's say, like the tech space, the medical space. When I look at any type of index fund or growth stock mutual fund or anything like that, I'm looking for track records. So I'm looking for funds that have been around for 20, 30 plus years, have been through multiple market corrections and or collapses, and I still want to look at the returns over the long haul. So that being said, growth stock mutual funds and or ETFs are going to be a large part of this strategy. So my next point is going to be the SEP/Roth IRA. And I believe that retirement accounts are such a hugely undervalued and underutilized element of wealth building by a lot of online entrepreneurs or people just in general who are pursuing success simply because they don't take it seriously enough. I mean, if you put even, let's say, $1,000 in a Roth, you would be floored over 50, 60 years how much that will be just as a side extra fund that's just compounding on itself every single year. So, SEPs and Roths are something that I feel are not only beneficial for wealth building, they're very beneficial for tax strategy as well. So, the more that I contribute to my SEP, the more that I am going to be able to take as a tax credit, which is going to save me more money and allow me to put more of my cash back into investments. So this is a monstrously important one for me. I'm a big fan of SEPs and Roths. There's other things like traditional IRAs, 401ks that you can look into as well that will kind of do the same thing. It is important to note, though, that the difference between a SEP or a 401k or traditional IRA is that when you put the money in, it is not taxed when you put it in, it is taxed when you take it out. How it is taxed is quite different than getting your paycheck. So there are definitely still a lot of benefits to it. But for those who are really looking to just kind of throw money into an IRA or an account, let it sit there, forget it ever existed, and let it grow over time, Roth IRAs are really where it's at, in my opinion, simply because the money's taxed when it goes in, not when it comes out. So if you get 8%, which is, it's still quite a bit, but even if it's like 6, 7% returns on a Roth, once again, you would be floored if you put $1,000 in there, how much that will be worth when you pull it out. And the best part about it is it's tax free at that point. My last point is really conservative investments like CDs. I might look into some other things like annuities. I really like the idea of CDs simply because they are FDIC insured, so they're backed by the bank. And while their rate of return is not very high, the best you could get maybe right now in the markets, I believe, is maybe like a 2.5, 2.6% over 5 years. The challenge with CDs is, of course, your money is locked up for however long you decide to give the bank a loan. But, they are FDIC insured once again, and they are a pretty consistent and safe bet when it comes to getting some return on your money. there are other options that I could look into, such as savings accounts with, banks like Ally and Everbank that are currently offering 1% plus interest. But once again, I would probably go towards the CDs because 5 years at 2.5+%. I can still pull a line of credit if I was, to have like an emergency situation where I needed to access the money. So CDs are something that are really kind of going to be not necessarily a huge part of this final strategy. The majority of it's going to go into the growth stock or the index funds and the retirement accounts, but the CDs are still going to be kind of a factor. So anyways, guys, this pretty much wraps up my little map of how I plan on getting to an 8-figure net worth. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to say, well, you're not a licensed financial advisor. You have no idea what you're talking about. You can't even draw properly. How can you be, so sure this is going to work? I mean, I'm not sure that it's going to work. But even if I don't make it to $10 million, even if I really, really screw this up, I've set it up in a way to where I still win big. And that's really what it's all about for me at the end of the day, is maximizing my financial life. So anyways, guys, be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And as always, take it easy.